Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. And here's my newest acquisition, my Yamaha Wolverine. We've kind of managed to hack around and get this thing out for a ride, but I'd like to make this a daily rider, not something you got to jump and mess with. So, first of all, our problem is you turn the key on, right? You got no lights, and you got no starter, and you got stuff like this. I believe this is to make sure you kind of put the brakes on before you know, it's a safety switch, an interlock. With it popped out, it's always made. I'm also missing the front headlight here, and I took a quick look around. I don't even see the wires for the front headlight, so that kind of gives you a little information to what could possibly be wrong. So let's start the troubleshooting on this no crank, no lights Wolverine. So what do we know about it? Well, first of all, we know if you jump the starting relay that it cranks. Well, that's a good sign because it tells us we have some battery and we have a couple of wires hooked up. We also know that it will run, which tells us the ignition system is alive. We are going to build the wiring on this thing a little bit at a time. You can see the 12-volt battery. I jumped across these two terminals and the starter went around. So we know that much of the system is alive and well. This thing has a nice big battery in it, but if you take a look at the voltage, it's a little low. It did crank, but we're going to be doing a lot of cranking on this thing. So I'm going to do a quick battery test. And when you do that, it says good recharge, and you can see right now it's got 147 cold cranking amps. So I want to peak this up. We're going to be obviously using it quite a bit in the troubleshooting, so I don't want it to go dead part way through and start confusing us. So I drew in the rest of the diagram, and we could go through that in a moment. Anyway, we know we're good up to here, and we've bypassed that, and we've had the starter fire. There's a coil in here that moves a plunger up and down, and when you put ground on one side of the coil, and you put power on the other side of the coil, you hear that clicking sound, and what it does is it moves the plunger, which has a little copper disc that comes up and connects these two together, and your starter goes around, as we did with that piece of metal on the outside. So fairly simple. Once again, you can see the two wires, right? 1, 2. Starter goes around. Now, what do you need to satisfy this to get your starter to spin? First of all, you need the neutral to be, you need the engine to be in neutral. When it's in neutral, that switch closes, right? If your key switch is on, right, you're now getting power from the battery, right, all the way over here. And this light lights up. You'll also notice that one side of the solenoid is now connected to ground. The second thing you need to do is push the button in the left hand handlebar switch, the starter button, right? You push this button, power goes there, the other thing goes there. So what do we know though? What do we know is going on? I know these lights aren't working. The key switch does turn the motor on and off. That doesn't mean that the power side of the key switch is working, but let's pretend we kind of know it is. Right now I'm thinking fuse, right? This might be the easiest fix in the world. There's also another hint here. This thing is completely missing the headlights. When they tore off the headlights, they might have popped the fuse because they caused a short. unfortunately on this guy, it's wearing its plastic, and you can't get the plastic off unless you get this rack off, right? We got all kinds of trouble in here. Anyhow, so I'm going to start by removing this, and we'll see what's happening. I'm also going to kind of look around on this side. Here's the positive. A lot of times the fuse is not all that far from the starting solenoid, so we'll start looking around to see where we have voltages, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So if you look under the fender, this comes from the power, and you see it goes here, then it comes from there. I cut a tie to get to this. You can see it goes to this fuse, and then it heads upstream. It goes to the handlebars. So let's take a moment or two to see what's going on in here, right? I think this slides right out. The cover pops open, the cover pops open. So I'm going to pop that cover open. We'll see what the fuse looks like. We'll put a meter on it, see if it's with us. If you probe both sides of the fuse, you can see we're still charging the battery. You get power. There is one thing I really have to warn against. Sometimes fuses are no good, and if you just use a meter to check both sides, you'll see voltage, but that doesn't mean you'll see power. A lot of people prefer to use a test light for that reason. The fuse, by the way, does happen to look good. So whatever's going on seems to be a little bit more upstream. Once again, I'm going to warn one more time. A lot of people prefer to use a test light. That way, instead of voltage, you know that you're actually getting power, that you're able to pull some amps. Some fuses look good, but they're cracked just slightly. So there's enough power to make the display work on the meter, but not enough power to light a light bulb or crank the engine over. Taking the bolts out, popping the dashboard. Told you that somebody's been hacking in here. That's never a good sign. After one unwraps the tape, I found this wire cut off, and it's coming out of the key switch. And if you hook a light bulb to it, turn the key switch on, you get light, and you turn it off, you lose light. So I think we found the break in the circuit. If you look at the diagram, right, I have a light bulb clip there and to ground. So once again, you turn it on, and we got power going all the way to here. Now, it doesn't go any further. And unfortunately, as you start getting into here, right, the power has to go from here to the key switch where it does the button thing and it turns the lights on and off and everything else. And you could see we got some more hacking going on. At this point, the front fender needs to come off. I also, this looks like it's one of the dash lights or something, right? That's disconnected. I mean, we got a real mess here, right? I got some more tape here. So it's going to take a few minutes to kind of wind my way through all of this. I mean, theoretically, I could probably turn this on and touch this here. Do I get a neutral light or anything? No. I mean, so I have all kinds of problems here. Anyway, I got to pull the rack, then I got to pull the plastic. So there we go. So the front fender's off. Same with the rack, though it's just hanging there. And welcome to my nightmare. So you got a blue wire that goes into some kind of connector there, and then it's broken off here after whatever this is, so it goes from blue to red back to blue. The connector for the hand doesn't look too bad, but this looks like it suffered a bit of a meltdown. This connector like goes nowhere. Then you got a bunch of connectors here for I'm not quite sure what the heck that is, you know. And then we just got loose wires. Like, what's going on? Like, what's with the loose wires? So other than color changes and assorted connectors and all, we also got trouble on this end, right? With color changes, right? They got a red and black here, right, which goes to a red with a white stripe and a blue with a white stripe. So quite honestly, the only way to describe this is a mess. And while I was taking this all apart, I also remember I kept saying I hear a clunk, I hear a clunk. You guys notice a problem here? So that bolt is broken off and that's broken off. I mean, luckily they put some metal into building this, but I do have some corrosion on the front end here. People like to run these up and down the roads after the roads get salted. And you really should make sure, if you do take them anywhere near salt, to wash them off, because they will rot out and fall apart on you. Anyhow, my goal is to push this button and hear the starter engage. And I have some research to do after that. Because there's always decisions to make. These guys are both disconnected, right? I guess one of them should go in there, but anyway, so I have to take a look at the wiring and make sense of it. For me, not for sale, not a repair shop. For me, if I turn the key on, right click, and I get dashboard lights, I'm really relatively happy, right? For reverse, for neutral, and if I push the button and the starter works, I'm happy. And you know, obviously lights on and off, and run it and off. If I have that much working, I'm normally relatively happy. I don't need it so that if I squeeze the brake lever, the starter works, or any of that other stuff. So once again, I'm going to go through the wiring and spend a few minutes at it and try to make a decision on what is savable and what just is not. I mean, this is a mess. That's the only way to describe this. It's a mess. And unless one is going to install an OEM wire harness front to back and an OEM key switch and all that other stuff, it's really hard to make perfect. Considering there's going to be some welding on this thing and it's far from primo condition, I think having the wiring so it isn't perfect, but having the wiring so that it's logical is not a bad place to get this thing. Okay, after much poking around, I realized this switch is done. And just quickly for illustration purposes, right, you turn it on, put a little micro switch here on one side. You guys could see that would turn on the headlight and tail light, and on the other side. So there we have it. just a quick inventory of what appears to be alive and dead. This came with a good battery. 8 plus, saves me 50 bucks. The starter's good, but it doesn't sound great. Starting solenoid is good. High and low works, fuse is good. Key switch is good. So all wonderful things. It appears as if the handlebar switch is dead, and I got to look into replacing it. And once I do that, I'll go through the trouble of taking a look at these lights here. I believe they're good. I think it's just a matter of the wire harness being hacked up. I think what started to happen, or what happened, is this thing has a winch on it. And the wiring for the winch doesn't look great. It looks pretty mean and nasty, as a matter of fact. And I have the feeling they might have tried to hook up the winch to the key switch and to the handlebar switch. And when they did that, they got themselves into a certain amount of trouble. You know, you start poking around with all this stuff and it's easy to go over the side. What I'm going to do, I got to order a handlebar switch before I can put this back together. And I'm going to try to go with the OEM handlebar switch. Hopefully it's not one of those $100 ones. So I'll get that. I'm going to clear up the wiring. I've found some success when it comes to wiring is figure out the minimum you need. And then I've been using car trailer connectors, you know, the flat ones. They have 4 pins in each. And if you kind of set it up so that the male is this way, female is that way, then with another set of wires, male this way, female that way. That way you can't plug them in together wrong, so to speak. And as you're picking out where you want to put wires on those trailer connectors, just in case somebody unplugs all this and decides to plug them together on this side, try to set it up so that nothing is a dead short, right, as you're picking out where you're putting things. So I think this about covers it. I really wish it was something easy. Fuse would have been nice. Or just a broken wire would have been nice. But you guys could see this thing needs a little more love and attention than that. I'm glad I also looked at it because tie wraps for front suspension, no so good. And that helped me figure out where my banging sound is coming from. And quite honestly, I should clean this frame up and get a little paint on it. Right? Get it all blasted out and fix it up. I think at some point, from the looks of it like that there, I think they might have used this to plow snow. That might account for some of the salt on it too, right? Winter projects. Anyway, so this wraps it up. I want to thank you all for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Please remember to keep your feet down, your heads up, and get out there and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.